Sure. And welcome to the belly of the beast. I swear it isn't so bad. The heart is like a blood waterbed. It is good to be with you, and I'm grateful to you for taking this time to watch cartoons and practice some care for yourself and for others. I love this episode, and I think it has a lot to say about care. How you can't help people who don't want to be helped. How sometimes care means doing absurd things like drinking honey flavored energy drinks and making a fool of yourself in karaoke. And how oftentimes the changes we strive for in the world bring us right back to where we started, only with a little more awareness and gentleness. Sometimes the longest quest brings you to exactly where you are. But I'd like to take an angle of creative interpretation and to consider Party Pat, and more specifically to consider the culture he has created amongst these rad party bears who need a fat party club to grind in. In order to give them this party club, Party Pat has to hide or downplay the fact that they are all inside a monster's belly. In a pseudo-Zen way, he says, "To truly party, one must leave behind the problems that are troubling and open one's mind-eye." Although this wisdom is actually a joke and his mind-eye turns out to be a sticker, he is still overseeing a party society where Cubby is hilariously, troublingly, afraid of his dad for telling Finn and Jake his fantasy stories. Cubby's concern for safety in the material world is dismissed because it's inconvenient to the party vibes. Absurdly, when Party Pat yells, "We're in a monster's belly," what was a fantasy story from the mouth of Cubby actually becomes more hype for the bears because it's coming from Party Pat. And I recognize I'm being a little absurd with the weight I'm placing on this, because honestly, it's just freaking hilarious and excellent writing. And while it might be nightmarish to be Cubby in real life, it's really rather delightful to watch the party bears rage on in ignorance. But I do think the episode affords us an opportunity to consider something that can be a real problem in meditation practice, which is spiritual bypass. Spiritual bypass has been written about extensively, so you may already be familiar with the idea. I recently encountered it again in a piece I'm linking by Sebene Selassie. If you're not familiar with the idea, Sebene describes it well. Spiritual bypass originated with the late John Welwood, an American Buddhist teacher and psychotherapist, who developed this concept in the 1980s to describe a phenomenon he noticed among mostly white convert Buddhists, many of whom had studied in Asia. These practitioners often used meditation and Dharma teachings, especially the profound big three concepts of impermanence, not self, and emptiness, or even the practice of letting go, to bypass unresolved emotional and psychological issues. He called this premature transcendence. In other words, spiritual bypass is when you ignore the fact that you're partying in a monster's belly simply because the party vibes are too strong for you to care. And the same can happen in meditation, or with any spiritual perspective. If your spiritual practice leads you away from the reality of the world, if it makes you care less about the suffering that other people around you are experiencing, if it makes you float above the world instead of being in it, being a part of it, or if it makes you avoid truths that are inconvenient and hard to face, rather than equipping you to face them with greater perspective, resilience, and skillfulness, then I would humbly but sincerely advise that you reconsider how you approach your practice. As Sebene concludes, spiritual bypassing privileges the abstraction of absolute truth, we are not separate, over the messiness of relative truth, we are not the same, favoring transcendence over embodiment. We have to find ways of partying hard that don't require us to shut Cubby up. And sometimes we find that the messiness of relative truth actually has easier solutions than we thought. Just by communicating, we may discover that we can keep partying in the same place with gentle lasers and that nothing else needs to change. But it's important that we find ways to turn towards messy truths instead of away from them, whether the answers are simple or not. I'll end on a bit of a sillier note, one that concerns the idea of bears becoming the stuff. The euphemisms about poop are so funny in this episode, and they remind me of the work of Sarah Nahar. Sarah is a scholar of defecatory and excretory justice. In other words, a scholar on the stuff. Her work is really thought-provoking and beautiful, and specifically examines how the way we think about waste shapes the way we think about each other and our ecological choices. One of Sarah's insights is that modern wastewater systems enable fantasies of what it means to flush away human bodily waste. Away is a false notion. Away is always somewhere, places where people and other beings are living. In other words, the way that we treat the stuff is another form of bypass. And this sense of away is a fantasy of separation, where we don't have to care about the problems of our interconnected world. Instead, we push them away. And in order to do that, we also push away anyone who may be reminding us of inconvenient truths about the way we've set up our world. Sorry, Cubby. Sarah's work demonstrates that what we do with the stuff tells us a lot about what we do with our other stuff. Or, as Sarah puts it, the larger web of life into which humans return their leftover nutrients relates to systematic injustice. Global systems that manifest harm even in this most basic and universal of human experiences. Her work is amazing, and if you want to have your whole perspective on poop and maybe the world changed, I highly recommend checking it out. But for now, let's not push our stuff away. Let's meditate with it, with a sense of care. Okay? It's time to get real. So you can begin by not pushing anything away, by letting it all be here. And as you're letting things be here, if it feels good, you can take some deep breaths and you can let them out in a dramatic way, letting things go, anything that wants to be let go. Some surface tension, some little echoes of anxiety or stress or holding in the body. But truly not pushing anything away. Letting your body be as it is. Your posture can be some combination of alert and relaxed, or it can just be however you find yourself, with no change at all in the shape you're taking, just in the quality of your attention. You're now sitting and know that you're sitting. Or you're lying down and you know you're lying down. This may be a familiar space or posture or quality of attention. And maybe your attention moves to something that is a stable anchor point for practice. Sounds in the room. The feeling of your body touching the ground or touching itself. And from here, if there's any sense of familiarity from these care practices in your body, some place in your body where care lives, I invite your attention to pool there, like a small stream gathering into a pond. Maybe it's some sense of warmth or spaciousness in your chest or around your heart. Maybe it's a gentle smile at the corner of your lips. Maybe a sense of brightness behind your eyes, or a kind of bubbly quality, effervescence somewhere. And this feeling might be subtle, might be small, or kind of quiet, and that's okay. You can use any of the things we've tried, welcoming a sense of gratitude for things you take delight in, for good things in your life, noticing how that feels. Or thinking about someone or something specific that you care about, some way in which the relational network of the world fills you up, some way it gives to you. And of course, as happens with any practice of attention, the mind will think about other things, get up and run around, move to something ahead or something behind, and that's okay. With gentle care, when you notice, you can bring it back. With care, we bring our attention back to a sense of care in the body. Practicing care even in our distractions. And welcoming what it feels like to care. And if this feels good, staying in this space of sort of warm delight, reflecting on a quality of care in your life, in your body, in the world, then of course stay here or move to something simpler, like sounds or an anchor point. But if you'd like to follow me a little further for something a little different, then I invite you to allow your attention, while still centered on this sense of care, to widen, for the lens to zoom out a bit. To allow things to surface organically. To let thoughts arise as they will. To let other body sensations arise as they will. In other words, to make your commitment to simply this sense of care a little less constrained, a little more equanimity, a little more spaciousness. The feeling of care is still at the center of your attention, but you notice these other things constellating around it, other parts of your experience. Maybe swirling or pulsing, constellating around this sense of care. And I promise you're doing great. There's no getting this wrong. You can always make it simpler or more concrete, but the invitation is to simply observe any part of your experience that comes up as you sort of hold this soft intention of care. And from this space, with the reminder that if things become too much, if you feel unsafe or dysregulated, you can always move back to focusing on something simpler, or can walk away from the practice altogether. But I want to practice this sense of truly not pushing away. From this sense of care, I want to offer the gentlest invitation to turn your attention to spaces where caring kind of hurts, where caring costs something, where caring requires something of you or asks something of you. It can feel really good and warm to be cared for, to receive care. And this is a fantastic place to start. The dead center of what we're focused on. But then there's also caring about, which sometimes feels great. Some people or things are very easy to care about. They fill us up, and that's great and amazing. But then there are harder things. There's suffering we can't stop. People we can't keep safe. Harm that happens in the world around us as a result of intentional and unintentional actions. And caring about these things can be a little harder. And as you're reflecting on this, I encourage you not to worry too much about how to solve it or what to do. We're not paying attention to the care as a means of solving a problem, but just to spaciously notice the depth of our capacity for care, to cultivate a sense of resilience and connectedness, to know that we are capable of caring when it feels really good and also when it feels kind of hard. And as long as you can stay with that sense of balance, as long as you don't feel too dysregulated or swept up in something that you can't hold, a feeling you can't manage on your own right now, then I encourage you to stay with it for just a moment longer. And I want to extend my care to you for doing this hard work. It can be really hard to care and to not push things away. So thank you. All right, great work. And I encourage you to physically shake that off, or give yourself a hug, or do some bouncing or some tapping to kind of expel that energy. This can be really hard work. Turning towards ourselves always can be. And being with the challenging parts of caring is certainly not easy. So I invite you to move with care into the rest of your day, whatever it holds. If you are following this time with some more ease and spaciousness, maybe lingering in a space of softness and kindness for yourself. If you kind of have to rush on to the next thing, then I hope that you can at least hold some of this sense of care. And it's never bad to put these things back on the shelf. Consciously making a container for something that is hard to return to later is different than fully avoiding hard things altogether. So it is okay if you need to set this down and move pretty quickly on to something else. Our capacities for moving back and forth between things that feel good and things that feel hard is often stronger than we imagine, stronger than we believe about ourselves. And it becomes stronger by practicing it, by moving back and forth between these zones. As long as it doesn't become too much, you don't tip into something that's horrible and unmanageable, then this is really powerful work. And you are not doing the work of bypassing, but the work of integrating and connecting more richly and deeply in this world that we are a part of together through watching some funny cartoons and sitting with our stuff. Till next time, adventurer.